I think we probably have a bit of time for questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Well, I've never been a teacher before, well, until Chelali gave me my
Proud to be a teacher
button, yeah. But I have to say, as a citizen, I just have to commend you for all of the work that you do in social justice. I was involved with Central America years ago, but lately your Palestinian-Israeli pamphlet is amazing. Your work on water issues locally here is wonderful, so thank you for all you do.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's great. And I have to say the BCTF is one of the unions that's pretty out there most of the time. And we get lots of criticism for some of that, but, you know, what's your choice? You've got to do what you believe in. Yes. Way up at the back there.
A question I was wondering is if you have reps in schools, like someone who's like a go-to sort of
Yes.
person in school, and how do you get involved with that role?
There's lots of opportunities because we call them school union reps. We used to call them staff reps, so you'll hear me slip back into that staff rep terminology. But most schools will have a whole wide variety of school union reps. So they'll have a Pro-D rep, which is a lot of work because you're organizing Pro-D for the school. They'll have a staff rep, which is the kind of union rep in the school. Most locals have a ratio for staff reps of, usually it's 1 to 50 staff members, so, or it might even be 1 to 25. So if you have a staff of 75, you'd have 3 reps or 2 reps, right? So you usually have an election at some point in the year. Most schools will have a social justice rep. They might have a working and learning conditions rep. They'll have a couple of staff reps. And we call that the school team. It's a team of school union reps in the school. So there's usually at least 5 or 6 of those reps, and you could run for whichever position interests you most. In lots of schools, I'll tell you a little secret, there isn't a big competition for staff rep. You know, you put your hand up. This is how I became involved. People say, how did you become involved? I was teaching at McGee Secondary, early 90s. I'd come back from those 4 years in Saudi Arabia, a couple of babies, and then I went back to teaching at Vancouver, and I really wanted to teach in Vancouver, and I decided I was just going to hang out in Vancouver till I got a job there, and eventually I did. And 2 years into that, being at McGee, we were having this little meeting at the, some schools have it in June for the next year, and some have it in September for the year. And we didn't have a status of women rep. I thought, oh, 1 meeting a month, I can do that. And then we didn't have a bargaining rep. I thought, 2 meetings a month, I'll do both of those things, right? And that was it. Sucked into the vortex of BCTF activity, and I haven't gotten out since. But I will one day, rest on my laurels, such as they are. So really, it's quite easy to get involved. There's always positions available, and there isn't a lot. I mean, sometimes there's an election for staff rep, you know, like all politics. There are people who have different beliefs and ideas about what should happen, and people run for election, and we vote to get a staff rep. But there's lots of opportunities to volunteer in your local, and almost everybody, well, everybody really, becomes engaged in their local first, right? And they get active in their local. We have a representative assembly 3 times a year, and every local sends reps to that rep assembly. It kind of makes decisions in between AGMs. And so eventually people get on to become a local rep for their local and come to our decision-making body, and that's often the first time people become really engaged in provincial politics at that kind of very political level. Or they may put their name in for a committee and get onto a BCTF committee. Or they become a trainer. That's another way to be. You send your name in to be a social justice trainer, or working and learning conditions trainer, or a TTOC trainer. You know, so you do workshops in those areas. So there's just, you know, the only thing it really requires is putting your hand up and saying, "I'll do that." I guarantee it. That works every time. Anybody else? Yes.
60 to 70% of the people who get their start on TOC lists.
Yes.
Does the BCTF have a position on retired teachers coming back to TOC?
Good question.
Yes.
Repeat the question, please.
Yes. The question is about TTOC lists, and most of you, it's true, will begin your profession on a TTOC list, on a teachers teaching on call list. Recently, though I guess this has probably always been true, there have been a number of teachers who have retired and gone on to a TTOC list. And the question is, do we have a position on that? Well, we have a committee on it because it has been a very significant issue that has arisen in a number of locals and has caused some tension between our members. So we decided that we would have a task force on this issue. We've appointed people to that task force, and they're working on it that fall, and there may be recommendations that come out of that. But I will point one thing out to you that I think is important. We only have one category of members. Well, we have several categories of members, but we only have one category of active members. And those are people who are working in public schools and pay dues to the Federation, right? And if you retire and you get on a TTOC list, you are an active member of the Federation, you're paying dues, right? And some districts, North Vancouver and Prince George, the local negotiated with their board 2 lists, a list of teachers teaching on call and a list of teachers who had retired and got on the TOC list. And they called the people who weren't retired first. And one of the teachers who was retired filed a complaint with the Human Rights Commission, alleging that that was discrimination based on age. And that, our legal advice on that issue was that we would not win that case, and it was settled. And so I think Vancouver people voluntarily go onto a second list where they don't get called until active teachers get called. But really, we are not able to discriminate between active members. People who are active members, and we shouldn't discriminate between active members. People who are active members pay due to the Federation. We do our best to treat them equally. So while we understand that young people who get on TTOC list are struggling for income, struggling to get in, and that's an important issue, there are also people who retire with relatively little service, who need the additional income from being a teacher on call in order to survive. And so there is a real sense in which it's not our place to say, you need the money, you should get the job first, right? That's not for us to say. But we do understand the significant tensions around those 2 groups of people, and we're trying to come to some resolution to that issue through our task force. Yes, there's a question here. Yes, you may, under the rules of our pension plan, and pension plans vary on this. Sometimes in pension plans when you retire, there are restrictions on how much you can work. But there isn't in our pension plan. So in our pension plan, you can retire, you can collect the pension, and you can work as much as you want. There's no restriction on that. That's my phone ringing. Just ignore it. It'll stop. I should have turned it off, but I forgot.
Yes, in our program, if your phone rings in a class, you have to bring cookies the next time.
Oh, yes, I'll be back. I'll have cookies. That's a very good rule.
It's a good rule.
So there's no restriction on you working after you retire, and indeed, some school boards will restrict it. Some school boards will not put retired teachers on their list or have some restriction on putting retired. They have to hire. A school board has to hire you back, because when you retire, you sever your relationship with the school board. So that's then the school board's decision whether they hire you back or not. If you're teaching woodwork, mechanics, shop, drafting, what we refer to as technical studies, they'll probably hire you back right away because there's a big shortage in that area. French immersion, there's a big shortage, right? So for the school board, it depends on who they need and who they want.